Hello, Sridhar. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
This is Jayesh.
Hi, how are you?
And Dr. Ramesh. You're on mute.
Conferred by the University of Jayesh.
How are you doing?
Very good. How about you?
All right, sir.
Yes, Ajay, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, Ajay, I can hear you.
Start in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, Ajay, I can hear you.
Start in a couple of minutes. Starting in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I see that most of our guests are here, so we can go ahead. Welcome to the 9th edition of Equator's Northstar. I'm Pallavi, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for joining us this evening. Like the brightest star in the night sky, every edition of Northstar features fireside chats with leaders who have broken new ground in their chosen fields and recasted industry features. Some of our previous guests included Ms. Parvin Burma, trustee erstwhile CEO, CRY Foundation, Mr. Madhavan Menon, Chairman, Thomas Cook India, Sri Lanka and Mauritius, Mr. S. Nagarajan, erstwhile MD, Mother Dairy, Mr. Srini Srinivasan, Joint MD, Bosch India, and Mr. Sivakumar Sundaram, Group CEO, Bennett Coleman. Today, we will talk about building castles in quicksand. In our January edition with Mr. Srini, we discussed that India could learn from German engineering and their uncompromised high standards. Our conversation today, however, is starkly different as it takes us deep into rural Bihar. So what's common in between these two? It's the fact that both these geographies have witnessed the pursuit of adhering to uncompromised world-class standards, despite limited resources. 30% of the world's blind population is in India. That's 4.3 million visually impaired people, and the number swells by 100,000 each year. It was this humongous task that led to the creation of the Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital. In the last 17 years, Akhand Jyoti has offered world-class eye care services and does about 80,000 sight restorative surgeries every year, 80% free, and in the process impacts the lives of millions of people despite being centered in a village where the supporting ecosystems are negligible. Today, we have the privilege of meeting the founder of such an incredible organization. Coming from a thriving business and a comforting family, it would be very fascinating to understand in the next hour what drove Mr. Mrityunjay Tiwari to own such an enormous social cause. An avid football and wildlife photography enthusiast, Mr. Tiwari is also an expert in bringing people together to achieve singular objectives that were deemed impossible in many circles. Having started Akhand Jyoti on the top floor of a remote temple back in 2006, the belief with which Mr. Tiwari pursued his ambition was that eye health delivered innovatively can usher in economic growth and gender equality in a state that is struggling with both. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague, Tarun, to quiz Mr. Tiwari on behalf of all of us. Over to you, Tarun.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you for that. Mr. Tiwari, are you here? I can see you. I'm not sure whether you're broadcasting.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm there. Tarun, thank you.
Hi, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Pallavi. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Tiwari. Hello to all of our audience members who are joining us from LinkedIn, YouTube, and various parts of the world. I would request audience members to type in their questions. Just before we begin a short info on the question and answers round, please type in your questions in the chat, and we would take that up at the end of the session. And you can also unmute yourself and ask your questions directly if you wish to at the very end of the conversation. Drawing from what Pallavi said, Mr. Tiwari, it is about your background. It is incredibly fascinating that you went down this particular road after graduating from St. Xavier's and coming from a stable family business. The traditional options before you were not meager, of course. What caused the shift towards this humongous responsibility of eradicating blindness from such a large, difficult geography? If you could please tell us something about the early days.
Yeah, I think it all had to do with a shift in mindset and attitude, and that happened when a chance visit to a remote place in Bihar where I saw girls being sold supposedly for household chores, and buyers could congregate and buy these girls, and all of these girls were actually from very poor families, and the family sold out of poverty. But God knows that, I mean, the girls could have been taken anywhere in the name of household chores. So that was something which I had never seen before, and I simply questioned myself as to what was the purpose of life. And that story actually, or that visit actually changed my whole perspective of what a prosperous nation would look like. In fact, earlier, coming from a business family, I always used to think that the Sensex and the foreign exchange reserves were the drivers of success of a nation, and those were the barometers of success. But that event actually changed everything, and it prompted me to actually think on two issues. Number one, that India is not one country. Actually, India is two countries. One I call India, which lives in towns, and the other is Bharat, the India which lives in villages. And unfortunately, most of the Indians live in Bharat. So that became clear to me that although we were prospering as a nation that time, the government had a campaign running, India Shining, if I remember. And secondly, I started questioning as to what is the true purpose of life. I always quote Mark Twain. Mark Twain used to say that the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you know why. And I could, after reflection, I could understand that merely having a family or a business or kids, that's responsibility, that's definitely not purpose. And that actually, that shifted my whole inner being towards what I in Hindi we call the journey to find oneself, shodh yatra. And I landed up in Bihar at Mastichak. I used to so I met our chairman, who is no longer here right now because he left his physical self. And then I decided to work for the blind patients, because that is where the second story starts. I always say that my life is about three stories. The first was about the girl being sold. And the second was when I came to Bihar, I went to the local district hospital and saw for 50-year-old farmer, being 10-year-old girl, being turned away by the local district hospital because there was no eye surgeon over there. I chatted up and found out that this farmer's sight was going down since the last 10 years. And the last 2 years, he couldn't see anything at all. And this girl was pulled out of school to take care of the blind man. And it was then that, when I dug in deeper, I could find out that blindness and visual impairment are a very, very big issue in Bihar. And that's when I decided to start the eye hospital.
That's that's incredibly profound, Mr. Tiwari. And talking about the problem that you were addressing, if we are to put numbers to that, to set some context for the audience members, India has 16% of the world's population, but over 30% of the world's blind. And the center of gravity, Mr. Tiwari, of what it seems like, the problem seems to be largely in the poor states. Given the amount of evidence of economic impact of curing blindness, which is there, for example, a person suffering from cataract may have 1,000 rupees monthly income versus post-curing 5,000 and above. Given the amount of evidence that is there for this impact of the economic upliftment, why would you say there is not enough national attention to an issue which is as critical as this is?
You see, the attention, of course, was there. It's just that the focus had to come to the poorer states, or there has to be a distinct bias towards developing states. For example, there is a national program for control of blindness, which has been running for the past 50-odd years. Now, the blindness and visual impairment is pocketed in specific areas. It's not that Gujarat has the same issues as, say, Uttar Pradesh, or say Maharashtra has the same issues as Bihar. So the problem lies in the rural pockets, the poorer pockets, because poverty and blindness go hand in hand. They're both a cause and effect of each other. And in fact, the World Health Organization also has cleared that cataract surgery is one of the 10 best interventions to reduce poverty. And because it's more than a healthcare initiative, it's an income restoration exercise, I would say, because, a cataract surgery done for, say, a farmer in Bihar compared to a person who is a retired employee, say, in Mumbai, is 4 or 5 times, it has a 5 times bigger impact, because, in an agrarian society, the farmer never retires, he or she gets retired only after being incapacitated or when they die. So even at 80-year-old, Dadi Amma stitches clothes to earn back, give income, contribute income to the family. So the important aspect was that the pockets were left. There was the lack of geographic focus on these pockets resulted in the multiplier effect. I would say let's take a very a reasonable example of, say, the corporate social responsibility per se. Now, it is natural that most of the organizations and the companies, they would actually like to contribute where their offices and factories are located. So there will always be, apart from the government initiatives, corporate initiatives and the individual initiatives are also focused or concentrated in those areas which are already developing. Now, let's take the state of Bihar. There's no industry out here. So since there's no industry, so individual efforts or even corporate efforts does not supplement the hands of the government itself. So that is why, these pockets, the blindness has grown, and because of the number of people actually going up and the number of beds being lower, therefore, there's a huge demand supply gap. And that is why, people remain blind. And I guess everyone, including the government, the corporate sector, and individual efforts, we have to come up with a distinct bias of development towards these poorer states. Then only, India can achieve its target of 8, 9, 10% growth, and etc. Because, just take this example, UP and Bihar together combined are the third largest country in the world in terms of population. So without a distinct bias towards such poorer states and such pockets, there is a greater chance that these regions continue to remain poor and continue to have high degrees of blindness.
That's true. And speaking about the demand and supply, which is something that Akhand Jyoti has been tackling in the last 15 years. And I understand that till date, 1 million people have had their sights restored by Akhand Jyoti's eye hospital. And the number is just growing exponentially each year. Or year on year, there's a hit rate of approximately 80,000 surgeries, 80,000 people basically getting their sights back. And at a state like that, as of today, you seem to be in a cruise control, as far as alleviation of the afflicted is concerned. Why did you feel the need for a 350-bed state-of-the-art center of excellence in the middle of nowhere? What drives an initiative like that?
So, two things. The first and most important crucial aspect is that there is a technical indicator in the eye health field, which they call as the cataract surgical coverage rate. Basically, it signifies the number of people having cataract who have access to surgery. In Bihar has one of the lowest CSC numbers. That means half the people only have access to surgery. So if 100 people have cataract, only 50 have access to surgery. The lack of access is on two counts. Number one, the lack of beds. So as I said earlier, there's a huge gap between the demand and supply. The number of beds compared to the population and the quantum of blindness is lower, far lower. And the second is the financial barrier, where because even just recently the Niti Aayog once again declared Bihar as one of the most poor state in the country, and with almost 60% of the people living below poverty line. So the fact remains that there will be a huge lot of people who will, although they may have access, there may be private clinicians, there may be private hospitals, but they may not be able to afford to pay. So it is estimated that Bihar alone needs a surgical capacity of 500,000 each year. So to do those 500,000, which currently the total capacity of Akhand Jyoti, other private payers, the private practitioners, some other NGO hospitals, so that is about 250,000. So until the 500,000 level is reached, Bihar will continue to have pockets, significant pockets of blindness and visual impairment. In fact, this center of excellence or this 350-bed new eye hospital, it is perhaps the biggest gift which the donors, patrons, and everyone associated with this new hospital can give to the state of Bihar, is this gift of surgical capacity. Because year after year, you can continue to eliminate blindness and visual impairment and ensure that no one needlessly goes blind. Second aspect is, you see, when you talk about a center of excellence in eye care, most of them across the world are located in the urban areas or in fact metropolitan cities. This would be one of the rare instances when this is located bang in the middle of the village, because our belief is that the problem lies in the village. So we must be amidst the villages to actually solve the problem. And this center also, apart from enhancing the surgical capacity, this center will also give the state of the art, any treatment in eye care, which is any technology which is available, it will give to the villager at his doorstep. That is the rationale for building of this center.
Absolutely. I understand the ratio. The more and more you speak, I understand the ratio of the gap that exists there. And what I'm also understanding is that it's been 15 years, but this could not have been an easy journey. And what's more interesting is that I can see from our discussion, whatever has happened so far, that there are very strong convictions and beliefs at play here that overcame rural Bihar, poverty, ignorance, malnutrition, gender-biased cynicism. I could go on. If you had to pick top 3 non-negotiables that have enabled you to overcome these challenges and become the largest eye care center in North India, which ones would you pick? What would you say has been the driver?
I would say I would just mention the 3 pillars of the why of Akhand Jyoti. That in itself are the non-negotiable, and that is the one which drives all of us, the entire team members here. Number one is that, we'll always be in eye health. So it's a mass-based problem. You'll never be out of work, if that's the way to put it. So second is that women will always be at the core of everything we do. Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, the bigger goal, apart from the reducing blindness and visual impairment, is to bring about gender equality in states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, which are basically patriarchal societies where the girl child is marginalized economically and in all other aspects as well. So women will always be at the focus of everything we do, whether it is internally or whether it is externally. And third, and importantly, we have bound ourselves to only work in low income geographies. Absolutely clear. We don't want to go to a Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai. There are a lot of service providers. We'll always work in a low income geography. So these 3 are the non-negotiables, I would say. And these are the foundations on which Akhand Jyoti is actually growing.
Understood. That's incredibly remarkable, Mr. Tiwari. And just like what you were talking about, the gender aspect of it, we are constantly, and I'm not joking, we are constantly reminded by RJT at the office that the understated achievement of Akhand Jyoti is the liberation of the girl child. That all of your pandemics are homegrown, top-notch female operators who are leaders in their own right. Can you throw some light in how this effort fits into the larger scheme of things?
You see, when Akhand Jyoti was started, we were there were 2 massive problems actually, which I could see. One, of course, was the issue of blindness. So I talked about that farmer being turned away because there was no eye surgeon over there. But that girls who were being sold, which I saw for work actually, and it was then that it always felt that patriarchy and girls was something which they were always behind, one step behind, and we needed to pull them up. So it was right from day one, it was clear that Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital is a platform for bringing about bigger societal change, and that bigger societal change is bringing about gender equality. So you can say that the business model is eye health, but actually we want to bring girls ahead. We want to create social change agents in society. So therefore, the Football to Eyeball program, which is our flagship initiative, that came up. This Football to Eyeball program actually is one solution for 2 massive problems: blindness and gender inequality. So we take in girls from extremely poor backgrounds, from rural areas, and right after they pass their standard 10, and we use football as an icebreaker in the community to actually draw the girl child out. So I used to be a former professional player, football player. It was always close to my heart. And there was this third story happens where I tried to get girls inside the hospital in the first 2 years when we started, but it didn't work out actually. They were either confined to their homes, so or they were working in their paddy fields. So this was then that these girls in a local girls' school, they were kicking around a roll of paper, and it was then when I talked to them, they were aware that they're playing football. So it was then we took their addresses, went to their houses, tried to convince the parents to actually allow them to come in. It took 6 months' time for the first girl to come in, but there was a trade-off in the sense you allow the girl to stay in the hostel and full time, and allow her to play football, and we will take care of her complete education and train her to become an optometrist, which they call as a junior doctor here in Bihar. So therefore, the girl is taken after standard 10, and then she undergoes 2 years of basic training, etc. The higher education we sponsor. Then she comes into vocational training for 4 years as an optometrist. She qualifies. Then she gets a full-time guaranteed job either at the hospital or at many of its vision or primary care centers. But and our goal is very clear. 50% of, at least 50% of our leadership have to be women, number one. And number two, and which is very clear, is that the pedagogy is designed to create social change agents rather than X number of optometrists. So, the whole focus is not only on education per se, but also internal transformation by various a dosage of spirituality, so that they start thinking as to how can they contribute to the community. And it is actually this element which has worked wonders, where we have a very, very high, I think almost 99.5% retention rate, even after she graduates, even after she marries. Many of the seniors are married and they're still here.
We should take a moment and if you could share about what exactly happens in the dynamics of the family once the girl starts to earn, and just the stark difference between what she has achieved and what's average in a situation like this. If you could share something about that.
Yeah. So the first level of empowerment always will be financial independence.
Yeah.
So because social change agents or role model is not a job, it's an attitude, it's a mindset. But the first level, which every girl will definitely go through, is financial independence. And when she starts earning, so she has a say in the household, and the fathers and the brothers. And once again, the participation of the fathers and the brothers are equally important if you have to pull them up. And that was possible, when she's here, before she graduates and become an employee. For 6 years, when she's here with us, you see the parents come in, meet us, meet the doctors, meet the girl herself, and her changing personality and everything changes slowly, changes the mindset of the parents as well. So once the financial independence aspect is there, it is a complete game changer, because then, she has a say in the household. The decision making also comes in within her ambit. And that is something which is the first step towards empowerment. And I must say that we are extremely, extremely happy that the girls are now actually taking decisions on behalf of their brothers and fathers.
I have absolutely no words to say here except the fact that we need to acknowledge that this is happening in a geography that has been listed as one of the lowest areas in the global gender development index by the United Nations, and it's absolutely incredible. And in whatever documents Akhand Jyoti publishes, I've seen on multiple instances that there have been 2 girls who went on to play state. There are multiple who are going up the ladder from optometrists and where they started. And it's absolutely it's all around just an incredible situation in its own. I'm also told from the same source who keeps on letting us know about the Eyeball to the Football program, that you are a master of collaboration and synthesis. Something like Akhand Jyoti requires a lot of people to come together and drive the agenda forward. Can you shed some light on all the diverse talent that you have managed to bring together to make this happen? The audience members and I would gain a lot by understanding how to bring people together to achieve a common goal, be it an organization or a firm. If you could share how you brought together Dr. Poddar, your advisory, the Shankara Foundation, and beyond.
So, one thing is absolutely clear. People will actually bring about change. So, you may have buildings, you may have machinery, you may have so many of the sophisticated items, but it's people who will actually drive the change. And we were clear right from day one that, we'll never be able to compete with our corporate healthcare counterparts, in that way, in terms of money, etc. So although the financial incentive is important, there is no doubt about it. But it's not the most important, especially when you're working in such difficult geographies. The most important thing which drove everyone or bound everyone was the cause itself. So right from day one, and since the last 16 years, I've been selling the cause. And it's the cause. Why, when you sell the cause, you are actually selling the culture, you are selling the values of the organization. And when you sell that, it may take some time. Some people buy in before they join. Some people actually will take some time to buy in. Some, of course, there'll be some who will never buy in. But at the same time, if the focus is all about the cause, at some point or the other, especially when your words and actions match, and it's not mere posters on a wall. So when that happens, people start feeling a sense of pride. They feel that, okay, I'm contributing to a gigantic mission. So I just a quick example is one of our most immediate targets is to make Bihar blind free by 2026. Now, you see, the fact in itself, it's Dr. Poddar has been, my comrade since right from day one. But all the team members, clinical, non-clinical, everyone, they feel that sense of pride that one day we will be part of that team which eliminated blindness from India's poorest state by 2026. That in itself is a sense of pride, which I think is priceless. And and that has been the binding factor of bringing talent. And I'm fortunate, I would say that, now we are sustainable on talent at least, because so whether it is clinical, non-clinical people, just like the football to eyeball program, the girls program enabled us to have a ready pool of talent. Similarly, higher management people also, from whether it is human resources or quality or operations. So they are also joining in, and they are, most important, they are living in the village itself. So that could not have been possible just by the allure of money. It is the cause which matters. And so I would say that if we are able to successfully sell our cause and vision, then any difficult geography, it's easy to work.
Absolutely. And that's very, very captivating, the entire story of how all of these diverse backgrounds came together to achieve what is now an operation at a very large scale. And one of the most amazing aspects of this journey that we are talking about today has been the unwillingness to compromise on standards. I would just like to share a context with the audience members that only 1 in 250 people who are 250 individuals who get operated on get a post-operation infection. That's unheard of even in the corporate hospital sections as well. There are many entrepreneurs in the audience members, Mr. Tiwari, today, who I'm sure will be eager to know how you managed world-class standards at this scale in a scarcity environments. How did you build Akhand Jyoti on quicksand?
So again, I would say if you're very clear on your principles and beliefs, and so you can, I firmly believe that you should never compromise on your principles. You may adjust, you may be flexible to actually to the challenges you face on the ground. But you see, for example, we do 80,000 surgeries a year. For us, the number is 80,000, but for that patient, it's one eye. Yeah. So we have to be absolutely, because you are actually changing the life of the person, more specifically adding income to that person. So therefore, it was very, very clear that volume without quality was useless. And therefore, right from day one, I and Dr. Poddar were very eager to actually draft systems and technology in a way, and processes in a way, so that the highest standards are met. And in fact, we always strive, the whole two things actually drive it. One is an attitude of continuous improvement that's there inside all of us, because we will never have the perfect infrastructure, if that's the way to put it. But what we did initially was that we broke the processes into microprocesses, and with every microprocess, we actually distinguished between critical and ideal. Started with critical, moving towards the ideal keeps on shifting. So, you keep on continuously improving. But at the other side, the key element which resulted in giving quality with quantity was innovation. Innovation has been at all levels of Akhand Jyoti, right from the operation theaters to the way the surgeons do like a factory-like setting, the way the patient is taken care of, the way the patient is brought in, the way, the number of beds are utilized. So there is a unsaid, I would say, unwritten mantra at Akhand Jyoti that we believe in more from less. So we always know, as an organization, we'll always have lesser resources. How can we maximize the resources? Probably Akhand Jyoti is one of the few eye hospitals in the country which does 2x the number of surgeries from an equal amount of beds. So, all these things were possible only with heavy doses of innovation at all levels. So innovation and continuous, a culture of continuous improvement, and with a distinct focus on every eye, that has actually helped us maintain those standards along with volume.
Before we go forward, could you share some examples about exactly what kind of a difference has a person experienced once an operation like this is over? For example, I had read in one of the articles that you had published about a fruit seller who gradually lost his eyesight. 5 people were dependent on him, and the entire family just took a tumble down the wrong lanes after that. If you could please share some examples.
So, like just like that fruit seller, there are, every day there are hundreds of stories which come in. So what happens is that, due to deteriorating sight, people are unable to work. Either it's most of the people whom we operate are either marginal farmers or landless agricultural laborers or small-time vendors. So all of these people, when their sight goes down, their capacity to earn actually reduces. But when they are operated, and after the next day when the bandage comes up and they'll be able to see once again, and after 7 days or 10 days of recuperation, they can go back to work. That is something which brings joy and smiles to all of us. And because we always keep on reminding that one aspect, for every surgery done, it's 4 times the income in the hands of the person prior to surgery. So that is a very, very critical component. In fact, I tell our donors and patrons that, when you're funding an eye surgery, you're not funding a surgery, you're giving 4 times income to that person who has gotten that surgery. So there are many, I'll just take in 30 seconds, I'll talk about a blind cripple. So this guy, Bhagelu Maji, so 70 kilometers from Mastichak, which is our main center. So he's a blind cripple. So he used to work as a human bullock in the fields, but he was unable to see, he couldn't work. So with his son, small son, I think 10, 12-year-old son. So he boarded, somehow our outreach teams missed him, and they couldn't get him to hospital for treatment. So he heard about Akhand Jyoti, he boarded a bus, he had fare only till 40 kilometers. He walked 30 kilometers on his crutches to the hospital on his own. And literally he fell down when he reached the gates of the hospital. And so we, treated him, gave him new clothes and everything. And that person actually goes back and works as a peon in the local school. He rings the bell, and his son is also back in the school. When I asked him as to, how could you walk 30 kilometers on crutches? He said, I wanted my son to go to school. Now, his immense drive to actually, get his son a good life, that actually propelled him to come. So, we are just the catalyst. The real change makers are the patients themselves, frankly.
And we're talking about an individual who's blind in one eye or partially blind in
both eyes.
Both.
So the boy was the walking stick. If you were there, the boy was, led him, and
yeah, that's absolutely insane. That story is absolutely insane. And lastly, before I can see there are a couple of questions already coming up. Before we go ahead into the question and answer sections, what I would want to ask, what we would all like to find out is, what do you see in the future? What does Akhand Jyoti look like in the next decade or so?
So I would say that 500,000 surgeries a year, 2 million people get primary treatment, 500 girls graduate each year, and the most important aspect, one of India's largest eye hospitals and non-profit organizations is led by a girl from rural Bihar. That is something which will be a real game changer, I must tell you.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly humbling listening to you, Mr. Tiwari. Just before we open the floor to question and answers, we would like to commend you on establishing 3 new surgical centers and 20 primary eye care centers in the last year itself. And from what I understand, the annual intake of the girls in the football to eyeball program has risen from 40 a year to 100 a year already. That's incredibly remarkable. I'm sure I would request audience members, whoever has a question, they may unmute themselves, and if you could please go ahead, or I will start picking up from your inputs in the chat.
Hello.
Hi, sir. Could you please state your name and then your question?
Yeah, hi, this is Nitish, this side. My question is for, first of all, really, I heartfelt gratitude to Mrityunjay sir for the remarkable feat what has been put on the ground for different strata of society, whether it be girls, whether it be patients, and an exemplary system for all to just to have a look at it and get motivation from that. Apart from that, I would like to understand that if likewise project or likewise facility can be given to similarly affected areas of other parts of the country, can guidance and support will that be available from Akhanjanti, or Akhanjanti itself would be available institutionally to be involved in those kind of projects?
So thank you, Nitish, for the question. And Akhan Jyoti's immediate task up to 2027 for the next 5-6 years is actually build the capacity in Bihar and Eastern Uttar Pradesh, where we are working at this point. So we do aim to go to the other poorer states post 2027, not now. However, before that, we will be very, very happy to share our knowledge, experience, not only myself, but my team members as well, for any initiatives which can be taken up in other states. Thank you.
Really, that would be very helpful, and I'm sure that time comes very soon.
Yes, we'll be very happy to help.
Thank you so much for that, Nitish. I can see that Mr. Srinivasan has raised his hand. Mr. Srinivasan, if you could please ask a question.
Hello, Mr. Tiwari. First of all, congratulations for doing such a stupendous work, especially in a place like Bihar. My question to you is that to be able to expand this to scale, are you looking at collaborations to really create a network of people, like-minded people, and for example, there is the Arvind Eye Care in the south and others, so that the number of people who could benefit can significantly increase?
Yes, we have a very strong collaboration with Arvind. But for example, they don't actively want to come to this side of the country. But we exchange knowledge systems, we exchange the new technologies, and they've been very helpful in their advice. And similarly, like myself and Dr. Poddar are also on some of their training and teaching panels, so that that information benefits everyone. Apart from that, there are many other organizations which are joining hands with us to have a multiplier effect. Just for example, say vitamin A. The vitamin A distribution is something which can piggyback on the work. So there are a lot of many things which impacts the girl child as well as on eye health, which we are collaborating, and we are actively seeking collaboration. We'll be very happy to entertain any efforts which come up, which will enhance the work, not only in this part, but also in other parts of the country.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I can see this question that has been posted on the chat by an assistant general manager, HR. The question is, what were the initial roadblocks when you started off 15 years ago with the temple and all of that in an area which is such challenging geography? So first of all, getting people, and then the supporting ecosystems like law and order, electricity, roads, all of that were absent. But like electricity in itself, till 5 years back, we didn't have mains electricity. We functioned for almost 12 years only on generators. But all of those could be only solved, but by a will to actually focus on where the problem is. It would have been very easy to go to Patna or somewhere else. But the challenge was, or the problem was in the village. So we decided to give it a push here. And more importantly, the initial team of 25 members, which started in the temple complex, barring one, everyone is here at this moment. So, all young guys with, they also had big dreams in their eyes, but, they didn't have any baggage, generally, the way the education system, in fact, I find many people
especially in the management spectrum, they feel that the general assumptions of a business, if this is there, then only this can happen. If this is not there, this can't happen. So that is something where young minds tend to shatter all those notions. They don't have any inhibitions. They are actually willing to tackle change. They are willing to innovate. So innovation has been the driver by which this small team of 25 people actually could actually go through the temple complex and shift to a larger complex.
Absolutely. It's absolutely incredible that to hear that that large chunk of the team is still there and were working at the objective there. We actually missed a question by Mr. Ashish Seth earlier. How do you think, this is the question, Mr. Tiwari, how do you think your work will add to the economy of Bihar first and then India directly and or indirectly?
So we talked about Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. These are the two states where we are working right now, more specifically Eastern Uttar Pradesh. So these two states have a very formidable and a large population. They also have the youngest demographic dividend and youngest population. And basically these are agrarian societies. But the important factor is, as I said, that cataract surgery or eye surgery is basically an income restoration exercise, and most people still work despite their age. So, the more surgeries you do, the greater the income of the family increases, and so on the state and the community itself. And it's only when Bihar and Uttar Pradesh together, they have the capacity to bring up or bring down the GDP by 1 or 2 percentage points alone. So if the contribution, if the healthcare contribution actually is there, which restores the income, therefore the states stand to grow. And second aspect from the girls program is that because the gender inequality is a big issue here, and generally the boys are getting most of the higher education and get to work or claim their place in society. It's girls actually, my guru Shri Ram Sharma Acharya ji used to say, had this slogan, Nar aur Nari ek saman. So 21वीं सदी नारी का सदी. So he always used to feel that until women actually come up, the true nature or the true growth of a state can't happen until women come up. So through the girls program, we are hoping to have social change agents in society who will try to remove social evils from the community, which in itself will reduce the challenges which people face, and then therefore the state can actually go up.
That's incredible. Does anybody else has any questions or? Okay, Mr. Ashish says that that's very well said. If anyone else has a question, please go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask the question. Or you can also raise your hand.
Hello, good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Sorry. Yeah, you are.
Sir, what is your aim, sir? Like after 20 years, where you're seeing Akhand Jyoti, and what is your primary goal will be that time for the underprivileged all over the country?
If it were come to only, we've thought about the next 10 years, but not about 20 years. But if it were to come into my mind, I would say that Akhand Jyoti would be present in every underprivileged society, not only in this country, but also in, say, the African countries. Why not in 20 years? So be in every underprivileged society and work there. As our outreach worker, the frontline people, they say, "Jahan koi nahi jata, wahan Akhand Jyoti jata." So we are very, very clear that in 20 years, I think in my mind, we should have a setup, or we should have interventions at every underprivileged society in the country at least.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. We can
I ask a question? Yeah, this is Srinivasan from Bangalore. Wonderful work, Mr. Tiwari. You and your team deserve kudos for what you're doing. Really heart touching the heart. Now, as individuals, let us say like me, how can we help?
So you can, I think, one of the first things, and which is very easy to actually, you can actually help spread the word. A lot of people, there's one drawback of Akhand Jyoti, that we're not very good marketeers per se. We're not able to market or talk about our work that effectively, I would say, but slowly and steadily, like many of our advisory board members who are from different industries, they are trying to help us do that. First thing you can do is actually spread the word about Akhand Jyoti, number one. And because when you spread the word, there'll be many and many people who can go to the website and they can contribute, not only financially, but they can all, because it's a humongous task. I mean, it's a very big task of actually both the girl program as well as the blindness program. But at the same time, there are volunteering opportunities. If you can teach the girls here, there are management programs going on, English programs, everything is there. So volunteering opportunities are there. And, the more you talk about our work, the better for us.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Financially, we can always definitely go into.
But please spread the word. That's something we're not very good at.
Yeah, but only thing, it's all in Bihar, UP. So to do a voluntary work, even teaching or something, possibly one has to travel there, right?
Online.
Okay. Oh, online is possible, right?
Yeah, you can do online. And if there are people who are management graduates or people who want to teach various management subjects, there are girls who are now whom we are developing as future leaders. They are doing their BBA and MBA programs. You can volunteer online as well. And if you have spare time, just come to Patna. We'll have a guest room, vegetarian food. You'll be fine.
Oh, good. That's nice. I think I visited Patna 30 years back, so I'd love to visit.
Now it's smooth. There's no problem. There's no gundagardi or there's no law and order issues. There's nothing like that. Right. Just come to Patna. Our car will pick up. Stay at the guest house.
Yeah.
Serve the organization. Go back with a smile.
So this virtual is a very good thing. So
absolutely.
How do I get in touch? I mean, how do I start?
Tarun or
I would share.
can actually share the links, and
we can share all of that.
Yes, and then we can exchange notes separately, and which areas you can actually volunteer or support.
If the Hindi is not good, is that okay?
That's absolutely not a problem.
Yeah, okay.
I would request Pallavi to just key in my email ID so that we can address any questions that request and share as well. I can see that we have two hands raised. Mr. Jahangir Adresher, if you could please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Mrityunjay, congratulations. It is just something phenomenal that you're doing. I've lived and worked in Jamshedpur for close to 20 years. It was in Bihar and it later was in Jharkhand. So the surrounding areas I know, but I also am aware that I was living in a very elite part of the state. So, what you're doing is just amazing and really, truly worthwhile. I had two questions. One has already been asked. It was about how to spread the word. And I might make a suggestion now. The suggestion is if you could have a session like this also conducted in Hindi and record it, that I think would be very worthwhile to circulate, as of course would this. So that's a thought for the Northstar folks to consider how to get around that and organize that. So that was one loud thought. My second question really was, did you experience any communal challenges in, as you progressed over the last, I know this is a delicate question, please answer it as you see fit, but that's something I'm definitely curious to know. Because one of the things that I experienced when I was working there was that there really wasn't any until somebody chose to drum it up and create a problem. And whenever that happened, people promptly fell in line on either side of the imaginary fence and a problem was created. That was my experience. Could you sort of comment on that aspect of things as you evolved?
Yeah, what you say is absolutely right. You generally the people at the ground, they have their own problems in life and they would just like to earn and go about it. But yes, political motives come in, and then as you said, that people get divided. But at the end of it, the tensions may flare for a few days, 1 or 2 or 3 days, but at the end of it, everybody needs development irrespective of whichever community you are. So what I have experienced is that you can flay down or you can reduce all the tensions simply by focusing on the development of the region, and irrespective of whatever caste, creed, religion you are. And that is why even whether we are a very diverse organization as far as whether it is employment or whether it is whether it is the girls program or whether it is the patients or everything. So we've just focused on passing on benefits to the people. And I think even all that divide actually filters down or gets broken down by development. And so yes, tensions do flare up, but I guess most people, there are radical elements on either side of the fence, but in most people would actually just like a nice job, be with their families, and just go about it.
Yeah.
Jahangir, I suggest you go to Mastichak for a couple of days.
We'll be very happy to host you.
Who's speaking? I can't hear that.
Mr. Ravikant.
Oh, hi. I didn't realize he's there. Yeah, maybe one day with you.
Sure. I go there frequently.
Okay, next trip, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Adresha.
Jahangir, he's the chairman of our board.
Yes, you've told me that. I didn't realize he was on the call.
Thank you so much, sir. Does that answer your question? We'll move on. Okay, Mr. Arvind has raised his hand. Mr. Arvind, if you could please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I just wanted to understand how do you sustain this operation financially? Obviously, your patients don't have the money to pay for state of the art. So how are you managing that aspect of things?
So the long-term sustainability is there in the mind, but at the moment we are generally reliant on donations. So we are working with a model of 80-20 at the moment. 80% is free and 20% is paid for those who can afford, especially city people. They actually come up and they can pay for the services. So we expect by the next 5 to 6 years to stabilize at a 70-30 ratio, 70% free and 30% paid. And the surplus from 30% would compensate for the free services given to the 70%. So comparatively to the other states like say Gujarat or Maharashtra, etc., the per patient revenue for paid patients also is lower. So that's why it will probably take some time. We expect to break even around 2027. And then once Bihar is sustainable on its own, we can then move ahead to the next poor state.
How you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for that question. There's a follow-up question to an earlier question that we had, which is how difficult was it to convince the parents to allow the girls to study further with the in-house facilities and later take up employment?
You see, as I said, the first girl came in after 6 months and after almost 7-8 meetings. So initially, the agreement. So we had an agreement because we were aware that the parents were still not sold. The way we used to go ahead with the parents was say, look, if you marry your daughter at 16, 17, what type of groom you will get? And once she becomes an optometrist or a junior doctor at the age of 21, you'll get a better groom. You'll have to pay less dowry. That's the language they understand initially. Yeah. So with that in mind, we cajoled them to actually allow their daughters to actually come in. We assured them about the security. They saw the hostels, whether it was a safe environment or not. And then we executed an agreement that you can't marry before 21 years of age, which is now 25. So it's the parents who are shifting the goalpost now, if that's the way to, because they are also seeing, now most of the new girls actually come in through the girls who've already been through the system, because what happens is that the girl who passes out already becomes a role model in her community, local community, and people can actually, oh, she's done it, so my daughter can also do it. So initially, it was tough, for the first 2-3 years, because the word didn't spread. But I guess now in the last 4-5 years, it's far easier, because there's already success people who have girls who have been successful, which are there to say. So now instead of me going, which I used to do in the first 4-5 years, it's the girl themselves which go out and speak to parents, potential girls or parents who want to come in. So that has become easier, because it's this is a girl who is from that same community. It's not someone who is coming from Mumbai or Delhi and talking about. So it's the same girl from the same community. So that eases out the pressure. So at the moment, I would there's about 1,000 girls in the waiting list, I would say, who want to come in, but we don't have hostel space. We are trying to gather money to build more hostels so that we could take in more girls.
Understood. And I would just like to mention Fagun Daka's comment. We would be delighted to offer our brand communication services for Akhand Jyoti. It would be a personal and a professional honor. If you could please share your credentials at my email ID, I would be very.
That is,
I would connect.
Thank you. I thank you for that offer. It is my privilege to work with you, and Akhand Jyoti will be indebted to you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Ms. Daka, if you could share your credentials at my email ID, I would be glad to connect you to Mr. Mrityunjay. And a last question that we can see here is from Mr. Jay Maru. For quality healthcare, while volunteers for general jobs are easy, getting doctors and surgeons to stay versus with a visiting once a month situation, is that a challenge, especially in the early days? What were the challenges faced? How did you address them?
So, as I said, volunteering right from day one, we were clear that we divided the processes, both clinical and non-clinical, and we were very clear as to which were the critical ones. So the critical ones have to be taken care of by full-time people. Volunteers can actually, can just contribute as far as the knowledge systems are concerned, but active service delivery has to be, we were very clear from day one, active service delivery has to be taken by full-time people who are sold to the cause. And it was with that endeavor that right from day one, we started going after clinicians or doctors who could actually offer their services. Even if it's for 3 days a week, that's fine. But it's not that you just come and do a hit job and just go away. But you have to be there on campus. You have to see the patient before operation, you operate, and then see the patient after surgery and then go. So one thing is clear that, professional management actually has helped us greatly. We've tried to adopt the best practices in management as much as possible. Of course, we've tempered it with our own vision and mission, and we've tried to accommodate or adjust it according to the geography. But yes, I would say that in critical processes, we are very, very clear that full-time people would be more important to deliver. And that's why we've been able to give quality. So all the doctors are full-time who are working with us.
Have we lost Tarun?
I think he's got frozen.
Yeah.
Let's give him 30 seconds.
Sorry, did I cut out? I believe I cut out.
Yes, he's back.
So could someone please share why did I cut out so I can continue from there? Hello. Could someone please share?
Finished answering the last question, Tarun.
Oh,
so
sorry.
we are done with the last question.
Oh, sorry. So I was just asking an extension to the last question that we were talking about, Mr. Tiwari. If you could please tell us about how you made Mr. Ajit Poddar join. For people who are on the call, Mr. Ajit Poddar is the medical director for Akhand Jyoti.
So, Dr. Poddar, it took almost, I think, around 1.5 months. He joined 1.5 months from when we started in the temple complex. And again, as I said, he really liked the cause, that the fact that we're in Bihar and wanted to work. So he started part-time. But, as they say, that the cause gets to you, the culture gets to you. And Dr. Poddar is perhaps one of those rare doctors, I would say, who gave up their flourishing practice, private practice, to actually come and join Akhand Jyoti full time and lead the cause from the medical front. So again, as I said, it's the cause that gets to you finally, and where he felt that he could make a bigger impact, far bigger impact from the institution, rather from Akhand Jyoti, rather than contributing a few number of paid surgeries from his clinic. So it was a big decision in his career to actually forego such a roaring practice and then decide to come into institutional practice. Just a few years back, the government of Bihar, I think it was in 2016 or 2017, the government of Bihar awarded him and recognized him for him completing 100,000 surgeries in his lifetime, and he's 48.
It's absolutely incredible. All the stories that you have shared, it's absolutely incredible. And we are just in time. I'm sorry, is my voice lagging? If you could, someone could please share whether it's coming properly.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. So it's absolutely incredible, all the stories that you have mentioned, Mr. Tiwari. And from all the things that we have heard, we're just short in time. If you guys have more questions, if you could please write them to me. I'm very sure I'll take it up with Mr. Tiwari later on and share the feedback with you guys as well. From all the things that we heard in the last 45 minutes, and actually more than an hour now, something that becomes very clear is that the infrastructure that stands in the middle of nowhere may be about eye care, but a hospital is causing societal change. And how often do you hear that? It probably sounds extraordinary and nearly impossible because we as a society are designed to celebrate numbers. This is visible when we look at what the media talks about. X metric tons of production, Y number of customers acquired. Even if we look at our conversation today that we just had, all of us as audience members wanted to hear the number of operations done, the number of girls trained as optometrists. But that only achieves results in a very short term. What really moves the needle in are metrics like number of surgeries done, but without complications. Number of change makers created in an area that is historically adverse to it. To substantiate that with the business parallel, we can look at Titan. Last year, we had the pleasure of a conversation with Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt, erstwhile managing director at Titan, who emphasized that Titan's 4,500% rise in value was not because they focused on customer acquisition, but on customer affection. And this was achieved with a singular method that Mr. Tiwari beautifully expressed as being married to the cause. In the last 2 decades of extracting value from organizations, we at Equitor have seen that firms that are married to the cause, like Akhand Jyoti, not only found and retained talent better, just like how Mr. Tiwari mentioned, more than 80 to 90% of the originating team is still there. These firms were also able to create an extraordinary bias across stakeholders. Severe challenges such as a lower price offered by a competitor did not affect the market share. Even in a price-driven economy like India, we have had the opportunity to help and witness average teams overcome market, business, and often internal challenges to not only meet existing goals, but also redefine the goalpost itself. And speaking of redefining goals, just before we close, we would like to share a sneak peek of our next Northstar edition that's aptly named Impossible, the Greatest Opportunity. In the March edition, all of you will get to meet 2 16-year-old entrepreneurs who won the prestigious Social Entrepreneurship Challenge out of 8,000 participants held by Upgrade. They did it by solving a major environmental problem and creating a B2C business model out of the same. We do hope that you can join our next iteration, which is surely going to be as exciting as this one. I would like to thank our audience members who joined us from LinkedIn and YouTube and from various parts of the world. Last but not the least, on behalf of all of you, I would like to especially thank Mr. Tiwari for his inspirational story of how change of world-class magnitude is possible just because it needs to be done. Just because it needs to be done. In the words of one of our closest friends, I'm not sure whether he's here right now or not, Mr. Giribala of Grey Caps, in the presence of individuals like Mr. Tiwari, we feel grossly inadequate. We at Equitor will keep all of you informed of Akhand Jyoti's progress from one milestone to another. I would request all of our audience members to drop a comment on LinkedIn and share what they thought about Akhand Jyoti, Mr. Tiwari, and the session itself. And with that, thank you all for joining, and please have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.